Okay, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Hello. Fine. Um, so we're going to dedicate tonight's class to the immediate and safe return of all of our hostages in Israel, and Hashem should avenge our blood. All right, let's hop right in. We got some exciting stuff going on. Got dual videos going on here. See what happens with that. Okay, we are now in the 6th class of the Sefer Yetzirah. Just a quick recap. We are still at the very beginning in section 1.1, and we're still focusing on the very first pasuk and the very first few words in that pasuk. Again, b'shloshim v'shtayim netivot pliot chochma hakek havaya. So it says, with 32 mystical paths of wisdom, God engraved the entire universe. So we spoke a little bit about the number 32, that the number 32 represents what we would say is both quantity and quality. Quantity, which is numbers, which are the 10 sefirot, and the 10 basic numbers that God used to create all of the world, the 10 commandments, the 10 utterances are connected to the 10 sefirot, and 22 is connected to the 22 letters for the Hebrew alphabet, which represents quality. And those are the two things. In fact, it says that God created the entire universe with 3 books, with number, with text, and with speech, with story. So we have the number, right? That's how we count things in numbers. And we have the letters, which is how you have a value of things, which determine the meaning of them. And then we have the story, or the book, or the communication, which is how God has communicated all these things to us and created the world. And it's these 32 mystical paths that we spoke about are nitivot, which make them very different than any other path that is spoken about in the Torah. The Torah usually has the word for aderech, which is a general path. Netivot, which we learned, is an individual path, meaning it's unique to us, meaning that these 32 mystical paths that are engraved inside of our heart, because 32 is the gematria of Lev, Lamed Beis, which is the Hebrew word for heart, that these 32 paths, in fact, are unique to each one of us, and they're inside of our heart, which makes them mystical, meaning we have to find them. God plays a hiding, what do you call it? A hide and seek kind of game with us. It's he doesn't reveal to us. Again, it would be nice if we came into this world with like a little booklet that says, okay, here's your husband and wife. Here's your path in life. Here's what you need to do. Here's where you're going to great, we'll just follow it. But then it would be boring, right? God likes to keep us on our toes, likes adventure. And with that, we're going to continue. Inside, I just read a very interesting quote. I forgot who it was who said it originally, but it said, freedom is the day when you realize that someone else is writing your story and you take the pen back and start to write it yourself. And I thought it was nice, right? Because in the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. These 32 individual paths make up our story. Our journey is our story. We spoke a little bit in the last class about this idea of look at after 120, when they put you in the ground, what you want people to say about you. Because it's very hard to find a direction if we don't know what it is we want ourselves. But this is part of the journey. It's we go through the journey, and the more we discover, and the more we go out into the world, the more we go inside of ourselves, the more we start to find our unique path, our unique 32 paths, if you will, which make up our hearts. So let's go back inside right now, because we're speaking about, we already tackled the idea of 32 paths, of the fact that they're mystical, that they belong to us. Now we're going to talk about chokhmah, or wisdom, which we spoke briefly about last time, where it says 32 paths of wisdom. And again, it's kind of a play, because we know that 32 is the gematria of Lev, or the heart, and wisdom, or chokhmah, is the brain, is the intellect. So why is it 32 paths of wisdom? You would think it's 32 paths of understanding or feeling, but it's not. And that's we're going to talk a little bit about that now, about this idea that wisdom is knowing or understanding or coming to this realization of what our journey is, what our paths are, right? We have, they call it in the English word for it is what's it called? Synchronicity. Synchronicity is when things are in a state of flow. When you start feeling that, like one of the guys in the center said to me the other night, he was over here, And he's like, Mantis, I don't know what to do. I'm like, why? He's like, it's crazy. Everything is just lining up in my life. Like, like I'm thinking like, hi, how are you? Like, where am I going to go? Like, for Shabbat. And then, my phone rings and someone invites me for Shabbat. And I'm thinking about like, how I'm going to get this business thing. And then it shows up at my door. He's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I said, you're getting into a state of flow. He said, I'm afraid. I said, what are you afraid about? Because I don't know. It's making me uncomfortable. Because sometimes we're scared. We're scared when things start going right. We're so used to being in this kind of like fog. And where, like, there's kind of like a weird pleasure of self-pity, of like of being depressed. It's like, you just kind of loathing. We spoke about this before, where like people actually start enjoying their misery. And then when someone takes them out of their misery and things start going good, it's like, hold on, wait a second. Like, what's going on? Do I deserve this? Why is this good happening to me? Like, I'm so used to being in the dark, and now there's a light in front of me, and it's a little bit frightening at times. But that's the idea. Chokhmah is this light. It's the opening, the flash of insight when we're digging and we're trying to find our path. And when things do start connect and we can get out of our own fears of success, we start to enjoy it. It's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling. And we've all had it at different stages in our life. Again, you can plug in whatever word you want. You want to call it God, you want to call it the universe, you want to call it energy, you want to call it consciousness. But when it starts flowing, it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? It's that nice, it's a nice feeling. And this is releasing this chokhmah, which ultimately releases pleasure. It's an enjoyment. So let's speak a little bit more insight. So it says, the Talmud states, who is wise? He who can perceive or see the future. That is because wisdom is the pure mind force that transcends time. On the level of wisdom, past, present, and future. Hey, how are you? Long time no see. How have you been? Welcome. Glad you made it. So it says, wisdom transcends past, present, and future. Because at this level, time has not been created. It hasn't been separated. So on this level, you can see the future just like the past and present. Let's explain that a little bit, because this is a concept in Judaism which a lot of people find very struggling, a struggle to comprehend of, if I have free choice, how does God know what I'm going to be doing? Right?
I always wondered that, yeah. Until today.
It's one of the...
You know what else confuses me in the same way? Like, that time doesn't exist.
The time doesn't exist.
I'm like, but he knows.
What do you mean time doesn't exist?
It's a creation.
Like,
God is just infinity. Time is just time.
It's a finite creation.
like same way, like they say before you were born, your neshama sees like what family you're gonna have,
Right.
how, because if it's the future. But
that's why some of the babies don't want to come out.
Yeah.
And we like have a choice, but
but we were all preemies, so that's kind of funny.
I guess we really wanted to.
I have to come out. Check things out.
My children But we like have free choice, but also we have free choice, but also God knows what we're gonna do.
Right.
It's like both.
So that's the idea. It's not a contradiction.
Like prophecies.
So let's look at it in a simple way. Like right now, we're recording this class. So if I told you after we were done, I can show you a video of what we just learned. Would you believe me?
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, you recorded it, right? So our recording device is recording things as they're taking place. Okay. And then once they're done, it's in the past. It already happened. God's recording device records before they happen into the future. But it doesn't take away the fact that we have the ability to choose. And the simple analysis, okay, should I go left or right? Since God already sees all, because he's all-knowing, he knows which way we're going to choose it. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I get to choose it. Because in this level, and that's what we're talking about, Chokhmah, which, believe it or not, normal, I don't call them normal, but people who can reach this level can kind of see things before they happen, right? Sometimes it happens in a gut feeling. It's above intellect. So it's because the level of wisdom is what we call a pure mind. Pure mind is pure energy before it goes into the second stage, which is Bina. Bina is what we call active or aware consciousness. Chokhmah is like unconsciousness or subconsciousness. Chokhmah is just the general energy, and Bina is what we're doing with it. So it's in a split second where that light enters into us, and then we start thinking or contemplating in any situation. Okay, where am I going to go tonight, or what am I going to wear, or what do I feel like eating? We've already taken that energy and started dividing it up into a process of whatever it may be, work, thoughts. Anytime we start thinking actively, conscious thinking, we're now into Bina consciousness, meaning we're already now trying to sort out what we're doing. But the Kabbalists of the olden days, which we'll learn about at some point in time, in order to climb the sclerotic tree, which we spoke about, they would literally go from level to level in their consciousness and in their soul and detach their soul from their body. They would make an agreement with God that I'm entering into these upper worlds, and I want to make an agreement with you that you will return my soul back to my body, and I'm agreeing that I want my soul to return back to my body. In other words, don't let me get stuck up there. We know the story about the four sages who went into the Pardes, and one went crazy, one lost his religion, one died. Only Rabbi Akiva came out alive, and well, because he entered with a pact with God. And the Kabbalists would make a pact with God. So when they went up to these higher stages of consciousness, into these awareness or these channels, it said they would oscillate between Chokhmah and Bina consciousness, meaning that they would teach their mind how to create like a pendulum, where that pendulum gave them momentum to actually start moving and traveling.
What's a pendulum?
A pendulum is like the thing that like dunk, swings back and forth.
Okay. Is
So-
Chachma just awareness, or just the pure
It's the
consciousness?
pure consciousness before even the awareness kicks in. So that pure consciousness, together with what we call, it's called verbal and unverbal consciousness. So the Bina is the verbal consciousness, the Chokhmah is the nonverbal. So they work together. It says Chokhmah and Bina are two twins that never separate. And if you look at the Hebrew alphabet, you look at the letter Beit. The Beit, inside there's a dot. That's Chokhmah. That's the point. That's what we called in Kabbalah the seed that impregnates the womb, that goes into the womb. Just like with us and physical people, that happens in spiritual energy. So the idea is that seed enters into the womb, that little drop goes inside of the Bina consciousness. And now the Bina consciousness has to absorb it, but not to get too stuck in it where it loses the Chokhmah consciousness. So it kind of floats back and forth between these kind of awareness and not awareness, consciousness and unconsciousness together. And that would give the momentum for them to travel to the upper worlds, which is quite interesting thing. So it says over here, when it's talking about this idea that Chokhmah is pure mind that transcends time. So in other words, if time is here, right, and Chokhmah is here above time, and we have the capability of entering to this Chokhmah consciousness, which we do, we can live above time. And when you're above time, you have the ability to see things before they happen, because time hasn't been created yet. It's a very trippy concept, and it's like
Remember, I did example. Remember, Rabbi, your friend that had a like that.
Alona Nava.
Oh my God, he gave us some Camp Homage. Do you remember? Alona Nova?
That sounds
With
familiar.
tattoos and all that, and he has like a longer beard.
I
I spoke to us when we were in camp.
Oh yeah.
you remember.
Yeah.
I do.
So because I don't know what happened, he took things and he was and then he had a clinic death, and then he saw everyone who is going to marry. What's the name of his children?
Yeah, I heard.
And
Okay,
he
the
was like,
only thing
stop telling me. I want surprise.
He said
Right.
Mashiach's gonna come before his beard turns white, and I think it's gonna come.
So
Please, I'm not
again,
saying-
some of these people we have
I'm
to
not
understand,
listening.
none of them are prophets. It's not the
Right.
Rebbe, where the Rebbe, what he sees is crystal clear. Hi, how are you? It's
I didn't come for you. I think
I think-
What's that?
the tea.
Okay, for the
I
tea, I will.
can't believe my birthday is 10 months away.
take the tea and then join this year.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is that people get glimpses, they get hunches, but it doesn't mean it's clear what they're seeing. So you have people and they, maybe have given people advice and it came true, and the next thing they start thinking they could predict things, and no one knows when Mashiach's coming because it's impossible. I would have bet my life when we had our forum party in Jerusalem that time. I'm like, Mashiach's coming tonight, and I believed it with my whole being, but it didn't happen. Right? So. But it's not prophecy. It's the idea of being able to, it says Adam Rishon, the first man, saw from one end of the world to the other. Meaning not just physical sight, but spiritual sight. It's a wild thing. I've had some pretty wild experiences. It's not the time to go into it now, but when I first began my tshuva process and I was experimenting and I had different sessions with plant medicine and all kinds of interesting things. I've had a couple of occasions where my soul left my body and I went up to upper worlds, and it's wild. Like I literally watched souls in the upper world, not in bodies, watching us down here. And just like we have TV shows down here, we are their TV shows up
What do
there.
they look like?
That's what I always thought.
And he
There's
was not religious. He was not
No, I
religious.
was not. I nothing to do with God. I don't know what God was. I was just going deep into my unconscious and kind of exploring what's going on there. Yeah.
I don't know. How is staying in Chachma, like, let's say if you're meditating and you're just trying to keep redirecting yourself to just be in the awareness, not with thoughts or feelings, like, would that be kind of in Chachma, or is that?
Yeah.
It's not
You could say
making a
that.
space for Chokhmah to come.
What do you mean?
I think that
Is it
she's
making
saying
space? Yeah.
that because what is this Chokhmah? It's a light that's coming
Right.
from him to us. So the minute you're emptying
Okay,
yourself,
so maybe meditating
It's-
is creating
it's
this
creating
So-
the space for this, and then it's coming and it's not coming.
Basically, what it really is, it's even a higher level. So it says that you have the heart and the mind, or in a different translation, the heart and the belly. And basically, it's fire and water. And water or the mind is the belly or the head, and which is the cold, and the heart is like the fire. So it says, how do you control between fire and water? You have to have an element that's higher than, which is air. So water represents Chokmah consciousness, fire represents Bina consciousness, and the air represents Keter, which is the highest consciousness. Which is why in a lot of meditation we focus on our breath, because we want to breathe and oscillate and go between the heart and the mind and the mind.
Wow.
So the crown, or the Keter, which is the highest, is above them. So that's really where we want to get to, is the state of Keter consciousness, where you're breathing. That's a concentrated breathing. And that's when those images start flashing before you, which is the Bina consciousness. You kind of like let them melt away and go through them, because you don't want to focus on them. If you do, then your head's going to start kicking in, and next thing you know, you're not going to be in a clear breathing state. So, let's hop back in. Okay, so it says the antithesis of wisdom is understanding. The Hebrew word for understanding is Bina. So Bina and Chokmah are really opposite consciousness, right? Because Bina is understanding, which means you're processing that information, you're trying to think it through. And Chokmah is just that pure energy before it gets processed. So it says Bina comes from the Hebrew root, which is Bain. What does Bain mean? Between, right? What does it mean? Let's explain. So it says understanding is the level immediately below wisdom, right? In the spherotic tree, you have Chokmah and then Bina. Keter is above both of them. So it is on the level of understanding that ideas exist separately, where they can be scrutinized and comprehended, which is what we spoke about earlier, right? Now you're starting to process. So someone says something to you, someone like says, "What do you think about this?" You're like, okay, you're mulling it over, you're thinking in it. Now you're taking that energy or that awareness and you're trying to make sense of it. So now you're already at the point where the ideas start to separate. While Chokhmah, or wisdom, is pure, undifferentiated mind, just a pure energy, right? Look at it as you have a canvas in front of you, and the Chokhmah is it's the paint. It's just sitting there. There's nothing happening. Once you start applying it and making a picture, now it's become into Bina. Now it's going into details. But before, it's just this blank energy. But keep in mind that this process happens in rapid fire. Right? Like right now, if I go to grab this water, what's happening is that it's faster than light. My brain is sending signals to my arm that's saying, move and pick up this glass. We're not aware of that. You're not like brain, unless you're really slow. You're like, brain, get cup, right? I've seen some people really high that probably go through that thing and say, I need a drink. So these things are happening in rapid fire. So as soon as that Chokhmah energy, that pure energy, the second it comes in, it's already impregnating. A lot of Kabbalistic philosophy, especially from the Arizal and whatnot, speaks about sexual imagery, like literally male and woman relations, because it's the closest we can get to understand the energy from above and the energy below, the masculine and feminine energies, which are Chokmah and Bina, which are how to balance physical and spiritual together. The woman represents the kli, or the spiritual, the physical, and the man represents the energy, or the spiritual. And you need a both. As I think we spoke about last time, the Sefer Yetzirah gives the classic example of a coal. That's why it says the heavens of heavens cannot contain you, God. What does it mean? It means that spirituality can't exist in a manifest way without physicality. So the example that's given is a coal. When you light a coal on fire, you see it burning. So you have the flame, you have the coal. Obviously, if you remove the flame, then you just have a coal. But if you remove the coal, the flame can't exist either. It just evaporates, right? Like if you light a match or a lighter, it just goes into the air. It needs something to hold it, like the wick. So that's the idea of and really the whole purpose of creation is connecting masculine and feminine energies and revealing how there's an existence of God, that there's a creator here in this physical world, even though we don't see him, even though he's concealed. When Mashiach comes, it will be revealed, because it will no longer be like, oh, this is a table and that's spiritual. Everything will emanate the combination of these two energies. So the idea is that these two things really come together. And that's what it says. It says, understanding is the level where division exists and where things are delineated and defined as separate objects. Basically put into, as we said, into details. On the level of wisdom, all men are included in a single world soul, men and women. Speaking to a bunch of women here, so it means together. Meaning we're all part of a universal oneness. Understanding is the level of the neshama, where the soul of each individual assumes a distinct identity, and each one is seen as a separate entity. So in the Chachma awareness, it's the state of we're all one, right? And that's why it says, it speaks about in the Tanya, this idea of how are you really supposed to love your friend, or you can close the door in the middle, or your neighbor as yourself? I mean, that sounds like, very, sure. Like, how are you supposed to do that? It doesn't really seem logical sense that you can love, and even someone you don't even know, the same as yourself. So if you're focusing, bless you, if we're focusing on this energy of what we say Bina consciousness now, which is the soul, which is that energy has gone into each one of our bodies, and we're all different. We have different DNA, we have different fingerprints, different retinas, we look different, we talk different, right? We're all different. So that's in a Bina consciousness, is that we look at the differences. But if you can go to a Chokmah consciousness, we realize that the root of our souls all come from the same place. And in that place of oneness, there is no separation. There's no, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm more attractive than you, I'm closer to God than you. None of that division exists. It's like a ball of clay that's one, and then you break it into little pieces, and each one makes their own design of it. So if you look at the different pieces, you'll say, oh, those are all different. But if you compile the clay back into one ball, you don't see it anymore. And that's the idea, is to kind of live in both of these realities and realize we're different. And we don't have to agree with one another. We don't have to see the same, look the same, act the same. But there's no reason to hate one another if we don't believe in the other's thoughts or actions or how they think. And this is one of the common, we spoke about it a little bit last class, one of the common clear examples of what we call yeshus, or feeling like you're better or different than someone else, is you hear it all the time. Oh, how can they do that? Oh, how can you say that? I would never say that. I would never do it. Because we're looking at the world through a lens of ourselves, and it already becomes distorted. It's already based on my thoughts, my beliefs, my upbringing, my DNA. It says you should never judge another person until you walk in their shoes. Chassidus explains that you can never judge another person because you can never walk in someone else's shoes, because you're not them. You don't have the same parents, you don't have the same grandparents, you don't have the same DNA, you don't have the same home, you don't have the same upbringing, you don't have the same tests, right? We're just learning the Tanya the other day. It talks about different temptations people have. One of the temptations men have is women, right? I don't think women have that same temptation where they're maybe some do, but it's more of a masculine thing. Women have their own, we all have their own, I guess, version of that. And so it says someone who is in a marketplace and is very cold-blooded and is not a passionate person, and beautiful women are walking by all day long, and they could care less. But give them like a complex mathematical problem, they're like, whoa, I gotta figure that out. So they can't judge someone else who's like all day looking like this. Like, what are you looking at? Like, because that's not exciting, right? We can't understand. We all have different processes. So this is what causes the separation. The unification is when we can go beyond that and be like, okay, you have your way, I have my way. Let's agree to disagree. But take the venom, take the hatred, take the anger, and it's really sad because you see what's going on in Israel today. And where did I just literally learned this, I think in the Sikha from last week from Northern Base, where the Rebbe speaks about this idea of we received the Torah because we were one. And we will receive it again when we're one. What does it mean, one? It doesn't mean we all compile it to one person. It means exactly what we're learning here. We're in a state of one consciousness, which is, I don't have to agree with you. We don't have to think the same, but put the weapons down. Stop the hatred, stop the anger. And in Israel, they have done a masterful job from the deep state and the Klippa and the forces of evil to cause us to hate one another, to have such anger and hatred between religious and non-religious and left and right. And you think the left and right division is bad in America? Have you ever spent any time in Israel? It's horrific. The far left hate Haredim. They despise them. They loathe them. It's like the first time I experienced this and I saw it, I was in shock. I'm like, we're all supposed to be brothers and sisters. You don't have to agree with their way. But what is this anger and this hatred and this venom? Because they poison how, that one's like that and that one's like that. And I can't believe he believes this. And I can't believe, and it's all just sick. It really is sick. So.
Can it be, Matis, that when you're looking at a person, like I'm thinking of myself, like Chokma and Bina, it's Abba Ima, it's the father and the mother. And for example, in my thing is like that the mother was very dominant and the father was a little bit dominant. So it's to me that the thing that was controlling me more Bina and division and I didn't have this oneness, and that you always can go back to this oneness when there's cooperating good and right between Abba and Ima. So the child that was born from it or live in it, so he can go and do this all the time, drinking between them. Whether there's one controlling or one Bina or one.
So yeah, go ahead.
No,
all right. So the question, because I actually had some of the guys who are watching. They said, "Please repeat the question," because they know what we're saying. No, not for me to repeat it. So the question is, if you've come from a home where the mother or the father are dominant, where there's, in your example, where the mother or the Bina consciousness is dominant, so that becomes more to the child. Whereas in a healthy relationship, the child could swing between, both of them. It's very rare. I don't know if I've ever. Oh, wow. Okay. My iPhone storage is full. Stop the recording. Okay.
It's such an amazing equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to stop that class there in the middle and we'll just continue on this one. And I'll have to figure that out. No, thanks. It's all right. It's I don't. You know what? Because I'm recording on a very high. It's on 4K, which is like.
$100 more than the regular.
Oh.
Okay.
Can you also mean like not necessarily that one is more dominant, but they're not like in sync with each other?
Completely.
Right.
I just give example.
Correct.
Right.
There's no.
Or like if they're fighting, or
But
they're
if
just
you
not
see
working
them, then
together.
you're not gonna have that.
You don't have anyone. Not the Chokma. Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah, if you got your 256 with a lot of storage.
I don't know. Is it?
I think 256 is like the highest.
I don't know. I gotta upload it to the iCloud thing.
The one here is.
So.
Could I say something?
Sure.
Have you ever read the book Circle, Arrow, Spiral?
What is it called?
Circle, Arrow, Spiral.
I have not read the book Circle, Arrow, Spiral.
It is the
Can't
most
say it.
interesting, fascinating book ever. You would love it.
All right.
Have you read it?
I'll check it out.
It's
Circle,
about
Arrow.
energy. The circle, it's the arrows. It's about all the energies in the world and the female and male energy.
Interesting.
That was my rebellion in high school, reading about these kind of
Ooh.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
The circle and the line.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
This
so
is the Tzimtzum.
it's very
It speaks on the Tzimtzum.
It's really have to read that book.
Okay, I'll check it out.
It's a Jewish book.
Okay.
Wow, interesting.
No,
So yeah,
it's like-
that is spoken about in Kabbalistic texts. It's called
Right.
point, line, and space or atmosphere. So going back to that question, I've never been in a home or met any parents who are in a total state of flow where the energy is completely balanced. It's a hard place to get to. It's not that it's impossible, but usually there's an ego involved, and the ego is the thing that is pushing on both sides. And usually what happens is one winds up surrendering and the other one starts going on top. So you're never, I don't say never, but it's next to impossible that you see a child and they're like, wow, their home was perfectly balanced and the energy was great between the mother and father, and now they're perfect. Which is why we learn about, there's this concept of called zuhumah, or spiritual filth or impurity. That's what happened when the Nachash entered into Adam and Chava. He put that evil stuff in there. So every one of our parents, our mother and father, have a combination of pure energy from the Adam side and the masculine, and the impure from the Samach Mem, Samuel's, and the masculine. And in the feminine, the pure side is from Chava, and the impure is Lilith, which is the female demon.
Wait,
But-
who's the male one? The name?
Some,
Samuel.
Samuel.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Samuel, Samach Mem. It's the
it's
Prince of
Oh,
Darkness.
the main.
The main,
and
yeah,
okay, okay.
exactly. So
Ah.
both of those energies entered in, and it's called zuhumah, or spiritual filth. And that spiritual filth is what causes the ego. It doesn't have to be evil in the sense of like someone's making a spell and like, I'm going to kill you. Evil is self-consciousness. It's awareness. It's separation. And we've all seen really dysfunctional homes. Many of us, probably all of us, are from them. I know I am.
When did you say they enter?
Hmm?
When do they enter?
Before that energy comes into the person. It's a combination. So
So-
the seed of the man and of the woman have a combination of pure and impure energies.
So we're born with it.
Correct.
Wait, who's the pure one?
Adam.
Adam on the masculine side and Chava on the feminine.
No, they both have a pure and they both have an impure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not one is not.
Right. So masculine has pure and impure, and feminine has pure and impure. Yeah.
joking.
I'm sitting with a group of women. I'm not going to speak about it. No, I have a very strong feminine side.
Let's play a thing.
Yeah.
So
So
they enter for the purity and the other ones enter.
for the impurity.
Oh.
So we're born with a combination of distorted energy. And each one of us is born, like you pointed out, with more masculine and more feminine energy. And if, God forbid, either one of our parents, when they had relations before they had us, were thinking of impure thoughts, or God forbid, thinking about another person other than their spouse, that energy of that is entering inside too. So now you have this whole pot of all kinds of crazy stuff going on, which is why the ultimate healing on we talk about inner child work. We've done inner child work a lot. It's the reparenting, it's the rehealing of the inner child. But ultimately, to really heal Chokhmah and Bina, it's what we spoke about earlier. How do you balance fire and water? You got to go to air. You got to go to Keter, which is God, which is above. You have to recalibrate, because it's the same idea of you can only wrestle with the darkness for so long, and at some point in time, you have to go to a higher light. So we can't unwind our childhood. We can't repick and say, let me do this over. Mom, you're more like this. Dad, you're more like this. We are who we are. All we can do is, how do we heal ourselves? And to do that, we have to rebuild our Chokhmah and Bina in ourselves. We have to purify our own heads and our own hearts. And the direct path to that is Mashiach, is Keter, which is the breath, which is the air, which is a higher energy than both of them, which is why the Rebbe focused so much on this concept of Mashiach, and especially in the latter years, because Mashiach is not just a general idea of, there is, like we talked about. There's the general Chokhmah of Mashiach, which is Mashiach himself, and then there's the individual spark of Mashiach inside of each one of us, which is our potential for redemption, which is God saying, I gave you a messed up puzzle, but I'm giving you tools to fix it.
So do you think, I'm trying to get you, if I'm doing therapy all the time, all my life, I know myself, it's a little bit struggling with darkness?
A little bit.
And you're saying that conscious, so if I want to balance this and not all the time be with this darkness, I need to go to a higher level, that it's Keter, that is air, it's mean God. what do you do when the snake enter to this God concept? Just like most
Sure.
of us, not you, most of the people that came from religious home, that the snake entered to the Keter in them.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that I mean, first of all, in that level of Keter, the snake can't enter because he can't. Where did he strike? His stroke, Chochmah and Bina, or Zah and Malchus, however you want to look at it, depending before or after they had children. He didn't strike him to hit because he can't. And that level of energy of the Yechidah
How do you,
can't exist.
How do you like practically access that?
Ah,
And
that's the journey. That's the journey. That's
What
the
is
work.
the Torah or Kabbalah or whatever? Is it through like mitzvahs or is it through?
So ultimately, if we're completely honest and transparent with ourselves, God basically says there's 3 columns the world stands on. That's the right, left, and middle. Right, left, and middle in Chassidus and Kabbalah, right is also above, left is also below, and middle doesn't change. So middle is always the middle. If you look at the spherotic tree, there's 2 different ways of dividing it. You have middle, right, left. You have top, middle, bottom. This middle, or Tiferet, whichever path you go on, up and down or right and left, the middle doesn't change. Tiferet is connected to Keter. It's connected to the energy from above. So ultimately, the idea when God says there's 3 columns that the world stands on. So the right side is mitzvot, deeds of kindness. The left side is prayer, which is, the Zohar says, the time of war, because that's when the Yetzirah comes in and says, why are you praying? You're wasting your time. No one's listening. It's a waste. It's not like, you tried to pray last time, right? Did it work? No, it didn't work. So why are you doing it? Like all that noise, you have to go to war with it and say, okay, well, what are you going to do one time that's automatically going to work, right? Like I tried to be a concert violinist once. It didn't work, so I quit. No. So that's the left side. And the middle side is Torah. So when God is saying, when it says in our teachings, basically that God gave us the cure before the disease, the cure is what we just spoke about, the Torah mitzvot and prayer, and the disease is what we also just talked about, this negative energy that's stuck inside. So personally, if you ask me, I think you need a combination of both, because I know many quote unquote Torah scholars who are emotional wrecks, who are horrible fathers, horrible husbands, but they're learning Torah all day. Well, wonderful. JCW is filled with pedophiles who are learning Torah all day. Like, what does that mean? Just because you learn Torah doesn't make you a good person. But on the other hand, you have the secular world, which maybe works on themselves or whatever, but what do they believe in? Where do they draw the line of morals, of ethics, of where? So things get blurred. In a war, they say you have to have any successful country who goes to war has to have an army, a navy, and an air force. And I look at it all these 3 levels. The army is the ground, which is the middle. The navy is the water, which is the below, and the air force is the above. So you have to really attack. It's a war. It could be a game. It's how you want to phrase it. But when we realize that there's really an opposite force that is trying to stop us, that is trying to literally cause us to be depressed, to be sad, to be angry, whatever the case may be, and we're aware of it, and we start understanding, well, this is happening. Like it's a hard pill to swallow that there's my enemies inside of me, right? It's like we see what's going on.
Does it spell out a reason why the force is there? Like, is that the point of us being here to fight with the force?
Yeah,
elevate the force?
to struggle, really. Like, because if you think about it, like how many people are really, if you have a classroom setting, if you look across the world, let's rephrase it. Okay, there's 15, 20 million Jewish people. I don't know. How many are really living at this optimal level that we would all think is what God is asking of us? Is it 10%? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. It's not a high number. So if you took a class with 100 students, and you said 85, 90 of them have C, D's, and F's, and only 5 or 10 of them have A's or B's, you'd say, well, it's not the class is messed up. Something's wrong with the teacher. They're obviously not teaching the students properly. And the idea is God's not expecting us necessarily to conquer these things, I mean, that's the tzaddik. When you get to a point where you're like, all right, there's no more evil. I'm good. Everything's wonderful. I have no bad thoughts. I have no bad, like everything's great. It's possible. But what's more realistic is that we start getting small wins where we start getting out of our dark place. We start getting out of our comfort zone, and we start saying, I want to make a difference in my life, and I want to become better. And we're tempted to do something wrong, and we're in that struggle, and we make the right decision. That's huge. At that moment, like the gates of heaven are open. You can ask for anything you want. It's God saying, wow, like you had a test and you overcame it. And if you failed it, I understand. It's the celebrating of it's baby steps. These are small corrections. These are not from darkness to light. It's from like a little bit less darkness, a little bit less darkness to a little bit of light, a little bit more light, and it's a path and it's a journey, right? You're going through the forest, and you see the end, and it's very far off, and then it's light. I remember when I was first doing my going through my tshuva process. And this was before I even realized there was a God in the world. I just realized that the life I'm living was not right, and something was not right, and the people around me were not right, and there's just a lot of bad out there that I didn't see beforehand. And I remember talking to my therapist at the time. I was like, I feel sometimes like I'm swimming in the ocean and I can't see it. It's like murky, but on the bottom of the ocean, there's like a drop of light, like something shining. And as soon as I start diving down and get it, it disappears again. And I think about that sometimes, because that's kind of like, it's what it is. There's God shining a light. And sometimes we can see it. It's very faint. And we're moving towards it. And then the negative energy closes it. And I'm like, oh, it's dark again. But it's not really dark. It's just, all darkness is the absence of light. There's really light there. We just don't see it, right? Like when it's nighttime out, it doesn't mean the sun disappeared. We just don't see it. It's covered over. So this is our work. This is our journey of how to kind of sift through this and try to get to and it's a combination. I'm a very big fan of all sorts of therapy. I think it's important, but at the same time, there has to be a forward progression towards also adding light, because people can sit in therapy for their whole entire life, and you're just talking about your problems all the time, and whatever the case may be.
So maybe this is what is missing. The feeling of, okay, I'm doing the clinic, but I'm in light and clinic and light. And the one is that it's okay, that this is my work.
Yes.
No expectations. No this, because I think this is what breaking me. Anyway, so you understand? I expect to be something so good, so better, and you want to be so much good. But in the end, it's breaking you, because if you say, look, the truth is you're this
which is why it's so important.
So I don't know the balance between the breaking, because you want to be so good and you're fixing from here and you're trying, and where he's like, no, I'm good with the struggle and I'm accepting it.
Right.
And I'm letting go.
So acceptance, very good.
So this is Kabbalah.
And that's why most self-help systems talk about the importance of writing down and celebrating your wins. Because here's what the klipa, or negative energy, whatever you want to call it, does. When we do something good, that's not a big deal. Who cares? Who cares? But when you do something wrong, you're stupid, you're a moron. Like, hammers us. So like, imagine it's just like a little energy ball, and something good goes up, and he comes and says, that wasn't a big deal. Okay. But that was the worst. Bam, bam, bam. And he hammers us down below, and then we're back in the darkness again. And then when something good happens, we're just like, oh, whatever, that's not a big deal. But look how bad this is. It's really trying to reframe our thought process to focus on the light instead of the darkness. Not to be blind, but to be aware. But, sorry, 1 second, no, it's okay. Like, so that's why it's so important to journal, to have a goal, to have, like, this week, someone's looking for a job. They can't do anything. This week, I'm going to call 2 people a day. At the end of the week, you didn't get a job. Maybe someone didn't call you back. Maybe nothing happened. But that's a win. You called 10 people. Write it down. I called 10 people this week. I'm on my path. Let me go out for a drink. Let me buy myself a pair of shoes. That's a lot. But what the negative force says, did you get a job? No. So what'd you do? You wasted your time. You sat on the phone. You're bothering people. Nothing happened. You wasted time. And we're now back into depression, into a negative energy, because we're not writing down and celebrating. I mean, celebrating, go out and party. I mean, like an awareness, a self pat on the back. It's like if you're a teacher or you're a parent and that's your student, like think about it that. Like, would you be that harsh? Would be like, you're so stupid, you're such a moron, you're such a failure. Like, who would do that? But we do it to ourselves all day long.
So, what if, sorry, I'm disturbing.
You're not disturbing, but I think Sarah had a question before. Go ahead, no.
But the negative force is also God. There's nothing. There's nothing that exists that's outside of God.
Right.
And God is all good and all loving. So whatever is it the illusion? Like he made something that's really good look bad? Like how can he
look at it this way? And it's also a very hard thing to grasp or to comprehend. But some people say, oh, God wanted the Holocaust to happen. He caused the Holocaust. No, God forbid. He did not want the Holocaust to happen, and he didn't cause the Holocaust to happen. But he gave life to the people, the makshimon, the name should be erased, they should burn forever in hell, who carried these actions out. Because if he didn't allow them to live, they couldn't do it. But he's not encouraging them. So Kabbalah teaches us that there's an energy source in the world. That energy could be used for positive or for negative. Why do you think there's such a battle right now for the Temple Mount, for Jerusalem, do you think the Arabs really care about? We live there. They're playing soccer. They're lighting fireworks. They're praying to facing Mecca with their butts to the Kotel. It's not a holy site for them. It's not mentioned once in the Quran. So what are they making a big deal out of it? It's the energy source of the world. And if you could take that energy, you could use it for all the negative things we don't need to elaborate that they do. So it comes down to the fact that when that's why everything follows the ratzon, everything follows the will. Meaning, how could evil be so successful? Because it says in Pirkei Avos, if you do a good deed, God will help you do more good deeds. If you do something bad, he will assist you in doing more bad. Not him personally saying I'm going to help you do bad, meaning it's an energy. It's an energy, right? When you start going down a positive thing and retrain your brain to be positive, you start thinking more positive. If God forbid you start thinking negative, we go into these spirals, right? We go into a freaking rabbit hole and it's like, shoots over the head, leave me alone, like, because it compounds. So the idea is what we spoke about. It's not that God is the evil, but he produces the energy that allows the evil to exist, and the evil
does exist.
For sure, but it's not independent of God.
Right.
Here's the energy, here's the positive, and here's the negative using that energy.
God is all loving. How can something be evil?
Right.
All loving. Like God is only good. He's not. Right. There's nothing.
So it says that
in God,
no evil descends from above, meaning the energy that comes down from above is good. But when that energy comes into this world, it can be used for bad things. And unfortunately, just like we spoke about, positive or different mother and father relationships, there are people who have horrible negative experiences, and it doesn't give them a pass. It just says that it's that more challenging for them to come out of that negativity. So there are sick people in the world, and there are evil people in the world. We have a choice. Can I get help and try to become better, or I'm enjoying this evil?
But what about
and they become worse?
Like you're saying that we're all born with like the negative and the Chava and Lilith, for example.
Right.
Like
the positive and the negative.
The positive and the negative. The negative is that it's the part that we're born with. Is it a part of God? If it's bad, you know what I'm saying?
In one level, everything God is God and everything is good. It's pure. This is what we're talking about. This Chokmah energy. It's pure energy, which is good. Through what we call Ishtalshalut, or the chain of creation, when that energy comes into the world, and it starts entering into us, into things, into situations, that energy can become bad. So at that level, look what's going on in Israel right now, right? Look at Hamas. This is unfortunately, the people in the Israeli government have such deep Stockholm syndrome, and they've become so, I don't even know the word for it, sickly sympathetic to their enemies who want to kill them, that they're sacrificing their own soldiers and their own people because they don't want to be too cruel to their enemies. It's sick. It's really crazy. So that energy of Hamas doesn't exist in physicality. It exists inside of us. It's a self-hatred inside that is perpetrated so bad that it manifests into something horrible. That's example what we speak about in the Torah called Amalek. Amalek is most of the energy in the world can be used for positive or negative. It says that the nations of the world in the days of Mashiach will have a place in this world if they follow the 7 laws of Noah and they agree that there's one God who created them and gives them all these laws that they have to follow. But there is something called Amalek, which is pure evil, which can never be transformed to good, which has to be totally eradicated. It's like a cancer. You can't make cancer good. It has to be wiped out. And the problem is when you're not in tune with what God is teaching you and you think you can figure it out yourself, you don't know the difference between, is this an energy that can be rehabilitated or is it an energy that's bad, right? Like God says, this food that is not kosher, it's not good for you. It can't be elevated. You can't transform it. It's pure bad. It may not look bad to us, but it's bad because he's telling us don't put it inside of you. So we use the example of Hamas when Israel is negotiating and trying to sit and like, I was there in Gaza. It was Gush Katif at the time, protesting. We're talking about, this is 2005, I think, where in their horrific, sick minds, it was Ariel Sharon at the time, the prime minister of Israel, they decided that we want peace, so we're going to give more of our land, this little tiny sliver of land, surrounded by dozens of Arab countries, with billions of Arabs and hundreds of millions of acres of land, but we're going to give them a little bit of our sliver of our land in exchange for peace. So they literally took thousands of Jews out of their homes, who built beautiful greenhouses, and they were supplying in Gush Katif most of the fruits and vegetables for all of Israel. And I was there. They mowed it to the ground, all of their homes and their synagogues, and they left our wonderful, nice neighbors in Gaza, the innocent civilians in Gaza, who their mathematic arithmetic books to their children, how do you add up dead Jews and live Jews? These are how many live Jews. These are how many are dead Jews. We need to have more dead Jews. That's how they teach them math. You can't rehabilitate those people. The second they gave them that land, they burned all the greenhouses to the ground, all the farming equipment, and they set up missile launching sites. And all the hundreds of millions of dollars that Israel, America, Europe have given to them to rebuild, they made tunnels, they bought weapons, and all they do is shoot rockets all day long, and they're still negotiating with them. Okay, what do you want? It's sick. But that is an example of energy that cannot be fixed. That has to be, garbage that has to be
I have a
eliminated.
question about that. Because, like, for example, Nazi Germany, right, where it was like an ideology that spread to everyone. They somehow managed to get rid of that. Like now, Germany is, pretty regular.
You would
I
think
don't know
so.
if it's great, but like they
You would think
somehow
so.
like Nazi is not like very popular.
Yeah, because most of them have
I'd say.
gone. You've heard of Operation Paperclip? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Operation Paperclip is when the Vatican and the Catholic Church, through Swiss banks and American Wall Street money, funded taking all the top Nazi scientists and leaders out of Nazi Germany and underground sending them to America, to Brazil, to Argentina. NASA, the American Space Exploration Program, is run by Nazis. It was started by Nazi scientists that were taken out of Germany. So they may not be sitting in Germany, but they're out there. Anti-Semitism doesn't go away. It's just bubbling underneath the surface, waiting to come out again.
I mean, is it the people or is it the ideology? Because is it?
It's
You know
both.
what I'm saying? Like,
It's intertwined.
Now,
Like some of it could still be.
can you get rid of the ideology? I know, like maybe the people that are so brainwashed, like Hamas, obviously, it's probably impossible to change their mind.
it's
about
also
everything.
for Hamas
But, like,
their
it's-
religion.
But I'm saying, is there a way to kind of kill the ideology so that the next generation can maybe?
No, because they created the ideology. It's not there's an ideology that existed and said, "Oh, that looks interesting. Let's follow it."
Well,
Someone
not
created that.
necessarily kids, not necessarily a lot of them speak out against it and they're really
Yeah,
ashamed
right.
for what, they're
Right.
really
So through that process, over time, some of those people have come out and have rehabilitated themselves and see the bad in it. But there's some who are still
Right.
just the same.
Right.
Maybe they won't tell you your face. It's underneath the surface. So
Right.
again, this comes back to, and it's not our work. This is God's work.
Right.
We can't necessarily know it's hard to comprehend. Like there's evil in the world. Like there's really bad evil
Yeah.
that you can't fix. That's not. It's like, I'll end with a quick little parable about this frog that was sitting at the end of the riverbank. And he's about to hop across. There's lily pads to the other side, and there's a scorpion who comes up to the frog and says to the frog, "Can you give me a lift? Can I go on your back just to the other side of the river?" The frog said, "You're kidding me? You're going to kill me. You're going to sting me." He said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Of course you are. You're a scorpion." He said, "I'm not. You're doing me a favor. Why would I do that to you?" He said, We're going to be buddies after this. Just give me a lift, and if you ever need a favor, I'm here for you." The frog says, "Okay." Scorpion hops on the back of the frog, jumps across the lily pad, gets to the other side. The frog goes to say goodbye. The scorpion stings the frog. As it's dying, the frog said, "Why did you do that?" "I can't help it. I'm a scorpion."
Wow.
Meaning, it's not a conscious, do I do this or that? It's baked in their DNA. There's evil. There's evil. There's poison. There's bad things in the world. Anyways, Hashem should help us that we should not have to deal with evil anymore. That evil should be removed. And we should all be able to focus on the good in our lives and the world around us. And we should have redemption, each one of us individually, and generate for all Israel. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Good night.
Thank you.
Sure.
Fire class.
Yeah.